Hi everyone, and welcome to video number 23 on warfare. And we're moving away from the nature of war, and we're going to have a look at the experience of war in the modern era, in the 20th century, from 1900 right up to today. And this one we're looking at two things: the recruitment and the training of soldiers during that period. And as ever, hopefully, I'll be explaining some of the key changes during the last roughly 120 years. Now let's start with World War I. 1914. Now World War I brought huge changes because they needed huge numbers of soldiers. In previous wars, back through the previous centuries, Britain had needed a professional, regular, standing army, which was relatively small in number. This changed in World War I. 1914, when the war started, Britain had a small, experienced professional army called the British Expeditionary Force, the BEF, and that was sent over to France straight away to fight at the start of the war. Roughly about 150,000 men. But it quickly became apparent they were now facing huge armies. Germany had millions in its army. Therefore, Britain needed to do something. Britain needed to change its methods of recruitment. The BEF very quickly encountered many casualties, wounded or killed in the first section of the war. Therefore, Britain needed replacements. Now, at first, these replacements were voluntary. Civilians. When war was declared, people were out on the streets, hooray, throwing their hats in the air. Great, we're going to go and fight. They didn't really know what was facing them, the reality of what was coming. So therefore, the government said, will you please volunteer? And there were huge numbers of volunteers. By the end of 1914, over 1 million people had volunteered. Now you would think, fantastic, that solved the problem. But it hadn't solved the problem, ladies and gentlemen. Because of the nature of warfare, the improvements in the technology of weapons, machine guns and artillery, etc., there were huge numbers of casualties. For example, at the Battle of the Marne, there were 250,000 British casualties just in 1 week. So therefore, these volunteers, huge in number, were not enough. For example, in 1915, 7,000 soldiers were volunteering every week. 7,000. However, Britain needed 35,000 a week. Can you see that there's a problem there? We have a shortfall. Why would people volunteer to fight in a war? Any ideas? Well, of course, to help the country in time of need. They were patriotic. Nationalism was a very powerful force. Let's fight for our nation, fight for our country. Some people didn't realise what war was going to be like, and they would believe that it was going to be fun or exciting or a little bit of a holiday or a change from their boring job. Many of them said, quick, I want to volunteer. I want to rush and volunteer in August and September 1914 because I've heard it'll all be over by Christmas, so I don't want to miss out. Well, ladies and gentlemen, the war was over by Christmas, correct. 4 years later, it was over by Christmas 1918, not Christmas 1914. But the volunteers at first did not know that. So, 1914, 1915, Britain is relying on volunteers. But the public is beginning to realise the new type of war. Huge numbers of casualties were returning wounded or dead. And therefore, the enthusiasm for volunteering begins to go down. But Britain still needed men. What could they do? Volunteering was no longer the answer for the recruitment problem. The answer, of course, ladies and gentlemen, Conscription, forcing people to join the army. So, January 1916, the government introduced the Military Service Act, Conscription. And that basically said, if you are an unmarried man aged between 18 and 41, you have to join the armed forces. From May 1916, that law was changed and married men had to join the armed forces. Britain was desperate for men, and conscription was seen as the answer. Now, in World War I, roughly about 2.6 million people volunteered. Conscription brought in another 2.8 million. Can you see that the idea of a small, regular, professional standing army has changed? We've moved to a mass, huge army where people were not professional soldiers. They had to go in and be very quickly trained and then go straight to the war. So there we see things beginning to change in World War I. At the end of the war, conscription ended. The army is reduced in size. Many of the people came back and took up their previous jobs. The army returned to a smaller, professional and voluntary setup. 20 years passed, and then we get World War II. And ladies and gentlemen, the same problem occurs again. And it needed the same answer. Shortage of men, shortage of soldiers, shortage of armed forces. Answer, conscription. So September 1939, this time right at the start of the war. Remember World War I, they tended to wait 1914 to 1916. Here, right at the start of the war, we get the National Service Act. And that introduces conscription. For men, of course, aged 18 to 41. 1 million men by the end of 1939. But that was not enough, ladies and gentlemen. Can you see the huge demand for men and women later because of total warfare? So December 1941, the government changes the law and increases the age. So men aged up to 51 now were forced to join the army. I hinted there at women. Let's have a look at women as a sort of separate entity for this little next section of the video, ladies and gentlemen. Women. In World War I, yes, women did get involved. 1917 to 1918 in the Auxiliary Corps, in the Women's Royal Navy, the Wrens, and the Women's Air Force. Also 1916, women working as nurses were joining the VAD, the Voluntary Aid Detachment. So women played a role in World War I. Voluntary. What about women in World War II? Women in World War II. Well, just as some men were conscripted in World War II, so were some women. Okay? Unmarried women aged between 20 and 30. This was the first time that women were conscripted into the armed forces. By 1943, the government again changes it, and women, older women up to the age of 51 would be conscripted. By 1944, over 200,000 women were in military uniform. So here we see a huge change in recruitment. Go back in history. All the warfare that we've looked at in previous videos dominated by males. Now finally women are beginning to take their part and play a role in World War I and World War II. Question though, why? Why did the government decide to use women? Have you got any ideas? Well, the answer, 2 words. Total warfare. War was changing, and the government needed help to win a war from all of its citizens, including women. And that's why women were beginning to be brought into the national struggle in World War I and World War II. Of course, this begins to lead to a change in attitude towards women. One example of that, at the end of World War I, women over the age of 30 were given the right to vote. Remember, women could not vote before 1918 in this country. But because they did such a fantastic job helping the country in World War I, many politicians said, we need to reward women. They've done a great job. They were just as good as the men. Surely they can now vote. So there's a change in attitude going on there. In World War II, as I've suggested, women played a role. They flew planes from the factory to the airfield. They worked very, very effectively in Bletchley Park with Alan Turing, helping to decode the German secret messages, a vital cog in Britain helping to win the war. They operated very successfully as spies in the SOE, the Special Operations Executive. So women played a big role in World War I and World War II. What about after World War II? Well, from 1949, women were in the Women's Royal Army Corps, separate to the men, not in combat until 1991, 1992. Then they are finally in combat zones, integrated into the same units as the men. By 2014, very nearly 10% of the army are women. They do fantastic work, flying helicopters. There's only a few things that they are still not allowed to do, certain units. The tank regiment and the SAS are two examples. But the role of women has changed in warfare. One of the big changes that we've looked at. Now, quick joke for you. I know I have. You know I like my jokes. I apologise. Here we go. What month do soldiers hate? I'm hesitating there. What month do soldiers hate? The answer, ladies and gentlemen, you guessed it, March. But I was very slow there to give you the answer. I should have given you the answer more rapidly, because then it would have been a quick march. Right, that's enough jokes. Sorry. A Status Quo once sang in 1986. You're in the army now. Whoa, you're in the army. Now, Status Quo. Oh, not my favourite band. However, they've chugged on for many years. Yes, you're in the army now. Normally, remember, I said people volunteered to be in the army. Remember in World War I, all those young men volunteering. The government encouraged this. They said, right, join with your mates. Peer pressure. Go with your mates, people down your street, people in your football club or your rugby club or your cricket club. And they put them together and they all fought together. Here's a great book about the Hull lads, the Hull Pals Battalion. That's what these mates were called. They were put into battalions together. And that one, the Hull Pals Battalion. But some people did not want to join. Well, when that was voluntary, that's okay. But what about when it was conscription and you were forced to join? And some people didn't want to. It led to something called conscientious objections. Okay, people who said no, either for moral reasons, I'm a pacifist, I don't agree with warfare, or for religious reasons, for example, the Quakers, no, it's against my religion to fight. So in World War I, there were about 16,000 people who refused conscription. Well, what would the government do with them? Quite simply, put them in front of like a court, a military tribunal, look at the evidence, and then say, right, Well, you've got some choices. Choice number one, we'll send you to prison. Choice number two, you can go and fight, well, go to the area of the fighting, the battlefield, and do a non-combat role, for example, stretcher bearing and stuff like that. Well, out of 16,000 in World War I, roughly 7,000 went to prison. 9,000 did these non-fighting roles on the battlefield. World War II, 60,000 people objected, conscientious objectors. 50,000 roughly went to do these non-fighting roles, and the rest, 6, 8, 10,000 went to prison. There was huge pressure, particularly in World War I, to actually join up, and women used to go round with white feathers, and if they saw a man who they knew was of a certain age who should be fighting and he wasn't, they presented this white feather to say, you are a coward, go and fight for your country. And there was pressure, and these conscientious objectors, they refused the pressure and said, no, 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 I do not agree. So just a little bit there for you based on the follow-up to conscription. Now, what about after World War II? Well, again, after World War II, they didn't really need a huge army, exactly the same way as they had in World War II and World War I. However, they did need quite a few men because Britain had to maintain its empire, the British Empire, the British Commonwealth. There were tasks there, and also because of what had happened in World War II, the end of it, USA getting the atom bomb, USSR then later getting the atom bomb, we get something called the Cold War, and Britain felt it needed quite a large army to sort of monitor the situation and demands of the Cold War. So after World War II, Britain still needed soldiers. 1948, they introduced national service. All men aged between 17 and 21 had to give 18 months military training and military service to the country. Once they'd done their 18 months, they were free to go back into the civilian life, but they were placed on a reserve list for 4 years and they could be called up in case of an emergency. And this national service lasted from 1948 to 1960. Whew. I was born in 1961, just missed it. Okay, so 1948 to 1960, national service. The final part of the video, ladies and gentlemen, today's army. Well, today's army, what we got in today's army? We've got a small, regular, professional standing army, roughly 85,000. With the Navy and the Air Force, total about 150,000. Why have we gone to a smaller professional army now? Why have we changed? Any ideas? High technology. Technology, weaponry, weapon systems, drones, all the things that we've been looking at in the previous videos, means that we don't really need as many soldiers, men and women. Of course, there is a need for very, very good training, high quality training, because they need high skill sets to use effectively all the high technology weapon systems. Okay? Nowadays, someone going into the army will sign up for maybe 4 years with the possibility of doing longer. They have 14 weeks initial training, but the chance to then specialise in certain areas when the training will go on for over 1 year. So training is vital to today's army. Officers. I'm going to get my officers out of my old World War I officers. Now, officers. 80% of them have got university degrees. They are graduates. Then they do extra training, for example, at military academies like Sandhurst. Okay? Now, in World War I, if you were in just normal in the trenches, you possibly could get promoted up. Why? Because so many of the officers were killed going over the top. Nowadays, you probably have to do your officer training if you wish to be an officer in today's modern, advanced, technically advanced army. As well as the regular army, of course, we have the Territorial Army, okay, where we have a trained, fully trained reserve force if necessary. So as we can see, there have been huge changes in the way that the soldiers have been recruited and trained from World War I throughout the 20th century right up to today. Changes brought about mainly because of total war. Recruitment changed, conscription changed, total war changed it. In our next video, we'll also have a look at how total war changed the impact on civilians, on the general public, the general population. So that's coming next. As ever, I hope it's been useful. I'll speak to you soon. All the best now.